For a man who was wrongfully deported from Maryland to El Salvador, Democratic lawmakers are in El Salvador right now advocating for the release of Kilmar Abrego Garcia.
What if I told you that a convicted criminal who entered the United States illegally was finally deported after years of exploiting the system? And now, the left is in full meltdown mode over it. This isn't fiction. This is the story of Abrego Garcia, a man whose past is as shadowy as the policies that protected him. And yet, his deportation has become a rallying cry for open borders activists. What's really going on here? Stick around, because what they don't want you to know about Abrego Garcia's deportation says everything about the state of American immigration and the political hypocrisy behind it.
That they did the right thing in the case of Kilmar Abrego Garcia. Tom Homan said that they did the right thing. They removed a public safety threat. He called him a national security threat and a violent gang member. That's what the administration continues to say here, that Abrego Garcia was a member of MS-13.
Abrego Garcia was not just any undocumented immigrant. He entered the U.S. illegally through the southern border in the early 2010s, reportedly using a network of coyotes tied to cartel-backed smuggling operations. He didn't come seeking asylum in the legal sense. He never applied for it. There were no credible threats against him in his home country. He simply came because he knew he could. Almost immediately, Garcia immersed himself in gang activity, eventually connecting with known MS-13 affiliates in Southern California. While his defenders paint him as a misunderstood family man, police records tell another story. From petty theft to aggravated assault, Garcia's rap sheet grew steadily over the years. He was arrested multiple times but avoided serious prosecution.
Yeah, that means all of us. All of us. Including our brother, smart apprentice, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who we demand to be returned to us and his family now. Bring him home.
Thanks to sanctuary city policies and legal loopholes that prevented ICE from detaining him. Abrego Garcia's most serious offenses were no secret to law enforcement. He was investigated in connection with gang-related extortion, suspected of intimidating witnesses, and was once arrested for possession of an illegal firearm. Despite multiple red flags, progressive district attorneys consistently failed to pursue deportation or long-term incarceration. Why? Because Garcia had a family. And in today's political climate, that fact alone was treated as a shield against accountability. His defenders, many from activist circles and left-wing immigration groups, claim he turned his life around. But surveillance footage, witness testimony, and court documents paint a far less innocent picture. Garcia wasn't some reformed man trying to make ends meet. He was gaming a system too paralyzed by politics to act. It wasn't until early this year, after over a decade in the country.
Designated terrorist from the United States. He's home. He's a citizen of El Salvador, a native El Salvador, who had due process, despite what you're hearing, been ordered removed by two separate immigration judges.
That ICE agents, working with federal authorities, finally detained Garcia following a traffic stop in Nevada. He had been using a false identity and was in possession of a firearm at the time of his arrest. His deportation order had already been signed years ago, but was never enforced due to a cocktail of legal challenges, activist pressure, and policy paralysis under previous administrations. It took a renewed push from the Trump-aligned wing of the Department of Homeland Security to finally execute what should have been a routine removal. Garcia was put on a direct flight to El Salvador last month. Now here's where the story flips into political theater.
More Democrats are traveling there to call for the release of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, making that case that fixing his mistaken removal to El Salvador is a matter of due process.
Despite his lengthy criminal history and illegal status, progressive lawmakers, media outlets, and left-wing advocacy groups are decrying his deportation as inhumane. Some are even calling for new legislation to prevent deportations like his in the future. They argue that Abrego Garcia was a father, a provider, and a symbol of perseverance. Mainstream outlets ran headlines that framed him as a victim of a cruel system, while completely ignoring the lives his criminal actions may have harmed. Once again, the narrative is being hijacked to fit a political agenda, one that prioritizes optics over law and order.
The Supreme Court has voted 9-0 to ensure that Kilmar is sent back to the United States. The Trump administration has been clear that they have no intention of doing that.
Abrego Garcia's deportation is not just about one man. It's about the broader failure of American immigration enforcement and the ideological tug-of-war that undermines it. Sanctuary cities, activist interference, and progressive DAs have made it almost impossible for law enforcement to do their job. The left would have you believe that every deportation is a tragedy. But what about the American families affected by criminal activity from individuals who shouldn't be here in the first place? What about the communities destabilized by gang-influenced drug trafficking and unchecked illegal immigration? This case is a warning sign. It reveals how weaponized compassion can be used to protect individuals with violent histories while endangering law-abiding citizens. And the louder the outrage, the more you should ask. What are they trying to hide? As controversy deepens over the deportation of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, several Democratic lawmakers have stepped into the spotlight. Senator Chris Van Hollen of Maryland traveled to El Salvador, raising concerns about Garcia's due process rights and calling for his return.
Maryland Senator Chris Van Hollen finally got his meeting in El Salvador with Kilmar Abrego Garcia, and he'll be passing along a beautiful message of love to Abrego Garcia's wife. Also, this tweet was just hilarious. Look at what Ted Cruz wrote. Find someone who looks at you the way Democrat senators look at illegal alien MS-13 gang members.
Representative Maxine Dexter of Oregon also announced her intention to visit El Salvador in support of Garcia, joining the growing political push to intervene in his case. Their efforts have ignited a fierce debate over where elected officials choose to direct their compassion. Critics argue that while Kilmar Abrego Garcia receives high-profile support from Democratic lawmakers, countless American families devastated by crimes committed by undocumented immigrants are routinely ignored.
But during this wonderful reunion, users on X were very quick to notice the knuckle tattoos that Abrego Garcia has. Political commentator Benny Johnson wrote, "That's an interesting tattoo for just a regular Maryland man to have on his hand."
Consider the case of Laken Riley, a 22-year-old nursing student at the University of Georgia, who was brutally murdered while jogging on campus in February 2024. Her killer, Jose Antonio Ibarra, a Venezuelan national who had entered the U.S. illegally, was later convicted and sentenced to life in prison. Then there's Jocelyn Nungaray, a 12-year-old girl from Houston, found strangled in a creek near her home in June 2024. Authorities charged 2 Venezuelan men, both reportedly in the country unlawfully, with her murder. Rachel Moran, a mother of 5, was attacked and killed while jogging in Maryland in August 2023. The suspect, a man from El Salvador living in the U.S. without legal status, is now facing charges in her death. And Maria Fuertes, a 92-year-old New York City resident, was sexually assaulted and murdered in January 2020. Her attacker, an undocumented immigrant from Guyana, had been previously detained but was released due to sanctuary city policies. Despite the heartbreak these families have endured, many of the same lawmakers now championing Garcia's cause have shown little to no empathy for these victims. Instead, they've chosen to rally behind a man with reported MS-13 ties, willing to make political noise over his deportation, while remaining silent on the tragedies suffered by American citizens. Meanwhile, El Salvador's President Nayib Bukele has unequivocally refused to return Garcia to the United States. During a meeting at the White House, Bukele mocked the suggestion, asking sarcastically, "Am I supposed to smuggle him back into the U.S.?" He went further, labeling Garcia a terrorist and affirming that he has no legal authority to extradite him. The story of Abrego Garcia is a symptom of a larger problem, a broken system exploited by people who know they'll be defended by the loudest activists and the most compliant media. But the American people deserve the truth, and they deserve policies that prioritize safety over virtue signaling. If you believe in protecting our borders, restoring the rule of law, and exposing the double standards of the political elite, hit that like button and subscribe for more truth-telling content. And drop a comment below. Do you think Abrego Garcia's deportation was justified? Or is the outrage just more political theater?